Well, hey, it's wonderful to meet you, Clipper. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, you bet. Well, as you know, my bread and butter is jazz radio, so I'm looking forward to getting into it with a musician, and you have quite a history. So before we get into your world of music, I want to know, 5 years ago, this pandemic changed everything for so many people, especially musicians.
Oh, yeah.
How
Yeah.
did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you approach things now?
Well, at the beginning, I was one of the first ones to embrace live streaming. And 3 weeks after the pandemic, all the shutdown started, I did a broadcast from a local piano store because it was the only place you could go. And I had a good friend who was a videographer, so we actually did a program from there, and we had a lot of viewers. I actually played debt on that program. And that was the genesis of the concert series that I now produce called Music for the Soul. Music for the Soul was started that was the first program that I did at just the piano store. So now we do concerts live in a local church that has excellent acoustics, and the programs focus on Black composers and women composers in combination with famous masterpieces. So we do Beethoven, Chopin, but we might combine them with other composers such as Chaminade or Florence Price, and certainly Nathaniel Dett. So that's the sometimes I have guests on those programs. I have singers, string players, and whatever. So we're always interested in doing music that's off the beaten track, which I think in the classical world we really need. So that was an important outgrowth of the pandemic. Coming back from the pandemic in a way is more difficult than going into the pandemic because we were all sort of on our toes when it happened, when the shutdowns happened. We had to produce music, and people really needed music because there was so much disruption and so much anxiety. We felt that music it really is necessary for people to bring people together. And now that it's over, then a lot of the connections, a lot of the organizations that were there beforehand are not there anymore, or they're radically changed. So it's almost like there's a lot of reinvention that's going on with myself and with organizations in general in the arts. It's a
So
time, a lot of change.
absolutely. So let's get into what you do on a daily basis right now in 2025. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids. It's career day, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you answer them?
I play music and teach. I play and teach music. So it's all about music and sharing it with others, either through performance or through teaching it. I teach it at Westminster Conservatory in Princeton. I have a lot of really wonderful students that I share my knowledge and my skills with, and it's wonderful to see them grow and adopt music in their own ways. And then playing, I play concerts all over the world, and especially in my area, though. I have a unique following in my particular area, and I have a lot of supporters here. But I do performing and recording also in Europe and occasionally on the West Coast. So I do a lot of performing, and that's really my joy. And I get to do my joy for a living, such as it is. It's not a great living, but that's not really why you do it, as long as you can keep the lights on.
Absolutely. So was it always music for you? Take me back to the beginnings. How did the piano and music become your world?
Well, I had piano lessons when I was a child, and I was pretty much of an average student, I would say, until I was about 12, and then got the bug. And I started listening to recordings and going to concerts of great players like Rubinstein and Horowitz. That was back in the 70s. And then around when I was 13, I decided this is what I want to do for my life. And my parents thought I was crazy. So, but what they did for me was um, refinish the garage and move the piano out there because I was getting up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to get 2 hours practice in before school. And they decided, well, that was kind of interrupting their sleep a little bit. So we moved me out to the finished garage to practice. And I practiced very hard and was accepted to the Juilliard School at age 17. So then I moved all the way out from Southern California to New York City to start my studies. And I've been on the East ever since. So that's
So,
kind of how I got into it.
yeah, so who were early inspirations? Who did you listen to that you emulated and loved?
Well, as I said, Horowitz was certainly one of my favorites, but also Gieseking, Rubinstein, all the great pianists, and we would go to LA Phil concerts either at the Hollywood Bowl or sometimes they came up to Santa Barbara where I grew up, and I would listen to them, and my parents were really very supportive after they kind of got used to the crazy idea. So that's they were my models, and then I had the great fortune to study at when I went to Indiana University with John Ogdon. John Ogdon was probably the greatest British pianist of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And he was very involved also with music that's off the beaten track. He was a real musical explorer. And I took my inspiration from that and decided to follow in his footsteps with uncovering these works that don't get their due and composers that don't get their due. And so I've been also a little bit of a rebel because classical music tends to be kind of conformist. And we have our ideas of that, or that world has their ideas on who are the great composers, and they've just kind of decided who those people are, and all the others just get ignored. And I find that there's a lot of reasons why composers get ignored. Sometimes they don't fit neatly into a category. Sometimes they're women, sometimes they're black, and we don't expect those people to write classical music, but they can, and they are wonderful creators. So that's my mission, is to uncover and share that music with people. And that was how I came across Nathaniel Dett.
Do you remember the first live show that you saw that blew you away that made you think, I want to be up there doing that one day?
Oh, it was probably the LA Phil at the Hollywood Bowl. I think it was John Browning that came and soloed with them. And I said, yeah, I want to be out there in front of all those people. It's a little bit of an ego trip, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not a particularly flamboyant or extroverted personality, but there has to be a little bit of an ego trip, like that propels you to get out over yourself and to just play beyond what you think you can do.
If you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one show, where are you going to go?
I would probably go to, well, first I would go way back and I'd want to hear how Beethoven played or how Mozart played. And my suspicion is that you would be astonished at how much they broke the rules. That's kind of my guess. So I'd be curious to see whether I'm right on that or not.
Yeah.
But more recently, if I could go back, I'd probably go see Horowitz play the Rachmaninoff third when Rachmaninoff was in the audience and came up and kissed him afterwards,
Yeah.
like something like that.
Yeah. The one thing about being around an instrument all the time is that you create this relationship and it's an apparatus to make this sound, but it's also an actual physical thing. What has evolved over the years of your understanding of the piano and how it works and how your sound and your voice works through it? What's that evolution been for you?
Well, first of all, the piano is a very strange instrument. Pretty much any other instrument, you hold it. It
Yeah.
becomes part of your body. Whether you play in a horn or a clarinet or a violin or a cello, you hold it in some way. You're in constant contact with it. So it becomes part of you and part of your soul and part of your voice. The piano, on the other hand, is basically a big machine. It's almost like a piece of furniture, and how you interface with that and have it become part of you and your imagination is kind of a magic trick. So when we play piano, we're always making magic. We're making something happen and making people hear something that isn't really there. It's a sleight of hand in a way. So when people say, well, make the piano sing or make the piano be an orchestra or imitate some other thing on the piano, well, the piano can't do any of that. It's a percussion instrument, but we can make you think it can do that. We make you hear things that aren't there. So it's like a sleight of hand.
So, what is it that's motivated you throughout all these years to not only educate the next crop of musicians, but to cultivate your craft as a musician? What is that ultimate motivation for you every day?
Well, every day it's a recreation. I practice pieces and learn them, and every day is a new discovery to dig into a work and see what's there and try to get into the skin of the person that wrote it. So you have to recreate that piece. You cannot just sit and play notes. That's not a creation. You have to recreate and make that your own expression. And great music has that way to it. You can interpret it in so many different ways. In the classical world, when I was young, I remember playing for somebody that was considering studying with. And I won't say who that person was, but they said that your job as a player and as an interpreter is to find the one true interpretation of a piece of music. And even when I heard that, I was young, I was only 20 or so, and that just seemed wrong to me. That just didn't sit right. That music is not a museum. It's a living, breathing art that you have to recreate this music that sometimes was written hundreds of years ago, and you have to make it mean something for who's in the room right now, not for who was in the room 250 years ago, because that's not there anymore.
Yeah.
The instrument isn't there anymore. The people aren't there anymore, and the acoustical spaces that you're playing in are not there anymore. You have to make it alive for now. So that's part of your effort. So it's an experience every day. Some days are on, some days aren't quite on, but every day is a step farther on that journey, and the journey never ends. And it shouldn't end because if you got there, well, what would be the fun? The fun
Yeah.
is all in the journey.
Yeah. So, I know awards and accolades and all of that's not the reason why musicians get in here. I know that very well. But, when you get good reviews and compliments, it means a lot. And in your bio, Fanfare had mentioned that you're one of the finest pianists of your generation, a consummate musician. But what was the first compliment? What was the first good review that you got that just hit you in a very specific way and kind of provided a level of fuel for you as you were getting your feet set in this world of music?
Well, when I played my debut at Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in Los Angeles, where the Academy Awards used to take place, I won a competition to play with the orchestra, and it was like incredibly exciting. I was 19. But it was also incredibly intimidating. It's like I'm playing in this famous concert hall and playing a concerto, and then I had a review in the LA Times, and they said he played with extraordinary dash and power. And I was like, just really? The LA Times said that about me? That's like really? So I must have something that's worthwhile. So then that kind of gave me the inspiration to keep going with that, but it's always kind of, sort of unbelievable when somebody says, "Oh, I'm one of the finest pianists of my generation." It's like, really? You think that? That's just kind of amazing
Yeah.
that you think that, because I'm like I'm my own worst critic. Sometimes I'll hear recordings of myself and I'll say, "Oh, that wasn't very good. That was terrible. What was I thinking of?" But yet the people will say, "Oh, that was a wonderful performance." So, but you have to have that. It's like if your standards aren't the highest, well then why are you doing it? It
The
has
one
to be the
thing,
highest.
yeah, for sure. So the one thing about the world of jazz, which is a little bit, I think, like the classical world, is that the genre gets pigeonholed into these eras, and people don't realize there's a lot of things going on right now. Like in jazz, you get stuck in that 50s realm with Monk and Coltrane and all of the bebop and all of that stuff that was going on. Same thing with classical. You'll get stuck in the Handel and the Tchaikovsky and the Bach and Beethoven and all of that stuff. But there's always musicians, there's always people that are making music. Tell me what's going on in the classical world, in your world, that's evolutionary, that's a part of a progressive musical outfit.
Well, before I answer that, I should say on my piano is a list of musical principles and aphorisms from John Coltrane. It's very inspiring. And one of them is don't solo for the applause, solo to touch the heavens.
Wow.
It's like that, what a mantra that is.
Yeah. Are you kidding? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean these guys, they just all of his principles and on his principles on practicing, on its discipline, it's love. Love is discipline. So that's just it's inspirational. So I keep that on my piano and I look at it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's happening in the classical world? Well, there's a lot of ferment in crossing over in classical musicians that are like playing around with combining world music or jazz elements. Certainly, Yo-Yo Ma does this.
Yeah.
And I think at least in world music, I'm very interested in that. I love world music because I'm naturally interested in different cultures. I have history is one of my geeky interests. I have a strong interest in history and other cultures. And the way other cultures produce music and what's similar and what's different to what we do is a real fascination of mine. So that is reflected in my interest in Det because Det had such a grounding in spirituals, in Negro spirituals, and that just infuses his music. And also, I'm doing another project, another recording project of composers that wrote sonatas, which is a very severe kind of structural form, but their material is based on cultural music, on ethnically based music. So I have Florence Price, who also has a strong root in spirituals, but also Wilhelm Stenhammar, that had an influence of Swedish folk music, Joaquin Turina, Spanish, very Spanish sounding, and Carlos Chavez, who was Mexican. So his music is influenced by Native American and the mestizo musical idiom. So that's very fascinating to me. And I think that's as the world gets more connected, then the classical music is going to reflect that more.
Yeah. So, of everything that you've done in your career and you've evolved to at this point, what are you the proudest of?
I think I'm proudest of the recordings that I've put out, that they are lasting. It's like a legacy that I leave. You can't make money from recordings unless you just happen to get like something that streams like 10 million times. And what's the chances of that? Yeah, and I'll never get back the money that I spend making them. But it's not about that. It's about leaving a legacy so that when I'm gone, people will listen to the music that I made and it will mean something to them. They'll hear it in a new way. And that's another Coltrane thing. Art made with heart never dies. It waits for the right ears.
Absolutely. So at the end of the day, the man behind the piano, the music, the education, everything that you're doing, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, students, listeners, everyone that you work with, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm an explorer. I'm an experimenter. Try out things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. With either interpreting or a piece of music that I work on, I have very omnivorous musical tastes. What I might listen to jazz, or I might listen to Josquin from the 16th century. So I like to explore, and I don't like to just fit the mold. Also have a lot of interests besides music, which maybe is not so typical. Oftentimes, musicians just all they can talk about is music. composers or performers or who's, a star today or whatever. I'm less interested in that. I'm more interested in the history or science or philosophy or psychology or things like that. I just have a lot of interests.
So all of your music looks like it's streaming. If anyone wants more, clippererickson.com is it the best place to go to have a well-rounded view?
Yeah. My website is where you can go everywhere else. I just started an Instagram account. It's pretty new, but I'm starting to put stuff up there. So join in and support what I'm doing there. I'm still feeling my way a little bit with it. But all my stuff is on the streaming sites. So it's Nathaniel Dett, it's Florence Price coming. I also am very intimate with a jazz-oriented composer named Laurie Altman. He lives in Switzerland, but he's a New Yorker.
Yeah.
So he's a wonderful jazz pianist. But he composes a lot of works, written down works like sonatas and preludes and fugues that I do a lot of recording for him. A new one of his is coming out in April called Briefly with a wonderful Austrian singer. So he's actually set his own poetry. Um, so so that's all coming on Spotify and Pandora and all those sites. So you can go to all of those things. But the website is really pretty much where people can go anywhere else.
Sounds great. Yeah, it's a
See what
wonderful
I'm
site.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and join my mailing list. I don't spam people. I send out maybe 6 to 7 newsletters a year. It's like, hey, I'm doing this. I've got a concert coming up or live stream. Check it out. Or I've got a new release coming out. Florence Price Sonata is coming out in February on the Navona label. So and the Laurie Altman CD is coming out in April. So I have things going. So if you want to know what I'm doing, then join my newsletter.
I love it. I will put all these links in the show notes. Clipper, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your passion. Thank you for your story. Have a wonderful holiday season and a great 26.
Thank you, and have a great holiday season out there in Kansas City.
You do the same. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.